First off, I did a ton of research for this video, and I was stunned to find some of these discoveries. So if there's any one of my videos that you watch till the end, I would hope that it would be this one. Now, my general audience consists of two different groups of people. The first is fans of the modern game. The second group is people who once loved the NBA, but have since lost interest due to the way the league has changed. They'll say things like the game is soft, there's too much flopping, and points are too easy to score nowadays. And let me tell you, if that's you, and you're not watching these playoffs because of that, then you're truly missing out. To be quite frank, this is one of the most exciting postseasons that I've seen in years. As crazy as it sounds, they're actually letting them play real defense. During the broadcast, Grant Hill even pointed out during Game 2 of the Clippers and Mavericks that it honestly felt like we were watching a 90s game. In many instances where the whistle is typically blown in years past, the refs just aren't making those calls as often. I could point out the amount of fouls that are being called compared to years past, but honestly, I don't think that's the best indication, because players compensate on the amount of physicality based on what's permitted. So even though the foul totals may be similar, the defense could still look extremely different. But what I can point towards is the way that overall scoring has dropped dramatically. During the 2023 to 2024 regular season, the average NBA team was scoring 114.2 points per game. This was among the highest scoring seasons in NBA history, and it was obvious as players were setting all kinds of goofy records on seemingly a nightly basis. There has now been 48 games played during these NBA playoffs, and teams are averaging 104.7 points per game. It's very normal for scoring to drop a couple of points from the regular season to the postseason, since better defenses are now involved, and each game has greater significance. But even with that being said, this scoring drop is still utterly insane and unique to itself. This season had a 9.5 scoring drop for each team, from the regular season to the postseason. That is easily the greatest scoring drop in NBA history. Up until this current year, there have only been 7 seasons in league history where the scoring dropped from the regular season to the postseason by at least 6 points, and every single one of those seasons happened in the 1990s or earlier, when the game was known for dramatically increasing its intensity and physicality in the playoffs. In recent history, like in 2017 and the 2015 playoffs, scoring actually increased from the regular season, which should tell you just how insane this 9.5 drop is in these modern playoffs. With teams averaging 104.7 points in these current playoffs, the offensive production is roughly on the same level as the 1991 NBA playoffs, where Michael Jordan's Bulls were making their first championship run. Also consider how they shot a fraction of the threes they're attempting in these modern playoffs. Now at this point, you might be wondering, why is this happening? Is it mere coincidence that offenses plummeted so suddenly to such a historic extent? I'm 99% sure that it was all by design, and the change came from the league office itself. It all goes back to the 2024 NBA All-Star Game back in February. Leading up to that exhibition match, social media was arguing about whether or not the game was even worth watching. Many fans had grown weary of all the high-scoring, non-defensive games of years past. Adam Silver was doing his round of interviews, claiming that defense would be the highest priority that weekend. He said that he had spoken with the players and encouraged them to put forward their best efforts for the sake of the audience. And what did it get us? Simply the highest scoring All-Star game in league history, as the two teams combined for nearly 400 points. Defense was not present in the slightest, and as a result, Adam Silver looked as if he was a lying clown with egg on his face. Just listen to how he sounded during the game's MVP award ceremony.
And to the Eastern Conference All-Stars, you scored the most points. Well, congratulations.
This is not the voice of a commissioner who was proud of his players, but that was a voice of a man who was clearly disappointed and embarrassed by the fact that his authority was not taken seriously. I remember texting my editor that evening, and he wisely predicted that this was a turning point for the NBA. That Silver was so insulted by their lack of effort that he would go scorched earth as a result, and make it his mission to discipline the players with a more defensive league. And you know what? That's exactly what happened. In the 23-24 season before the All-Star game, teams were averaging 115.5 points per game, which was literally the highest it had been since the days that Wilt Chamberlain played. After the All-Star game, teams averaged only 111.6 points per game. That might not sound like that much of a difference, but look at some other ways it affected the statistics. Before the All-Star game, a player scored at least 50 points 15 times. After the All-Star game, that only happened 5 times. Before the game, 6 players had scored at least 60 points, and 2 players had scored 70 points. After the game, only 1 player scored 60 points, and no player got close to reaching 70. But this is almost certainly the most revealing stat. 140-point games were pretty darn common during this recent regular season. In fact, a team scored at least 140 points per every 16 games. There have been 49 games played during these 2024 NBA playoffs, and not a single team has exceeded 130 points. Let's be real here. The NBA product we are watching today is not the NBA product we were watching before the All-Star break. My hope is that this wasn't just some short-term disciplinary action by Adam Silver, but the hope is that he recognizes that the NBA is more exciting and more popular for all audiences when the players are allowed to play more aggressive defense. As a general basketball fan, I haven't been this excited about the NBA product in nearly a decade. It is really just that excellent at the moment. Now my closing thought is just one that I couldn't ignore. For years, I've seen analysts and NBA YouTubers much younger than me claiming that the game was so high scoring these days simply because offenses are so much better than they've ever been. They've claimed that the game and the players had evolved to such an extent that solid defense has become impossible, and that regular 60 and 70-point games were just a byproduct of that evolution. Well, I'd like to declare that this myth is officially dead. Turns out, when you let guys play full court defense, and when the referees don't just cater to the offensive player's will, then the scores become more pedestrian across the board rather quickly. This is why for so long, we said guys like MJ and Kobe would average 40 to 50 points in the modern league, because the NBA had got to a point where a talented scorer could do basically whatever he wanted with little resistance. But I'm happy to finally say, in this current league, where the playoffs have been so physical and the pace has been slowed down to such an extent that even guys like Kobe and Jordan would simply look like the regular Kobe and Jordan. Because this is real competition, with real defense and with some truly entertaining basketball.